Today on Locked On Canadiens, we're going to be seeing the Penguins a lot this week, but you know who's probably not going to be seeing him a lot this week is Sam Montembeault. We talk about what the Montreal Canadiens should be doing with Sam and more up next.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. I love saying that. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. My name is Laura Saba, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. The Canadiens have a packed week, but what else is new? This is how the schedule just kind of is. And how are you feeling heading into 4 tough games?
You know, I'm looking at the schedule coming up, and we'll talk about it in our weekly forecast. And I'm still ruminating on the game that happened on Sunday night against the Edmonton Oilers, where they basically just Marty just decided to sick Mike Matheson on Connor McDavid, and it worked really well. And I'm kind of wondering why they don't just do that every time they're on home ice. And I think there might be some opportunities to do that this week with some top-heavy teams coming into Montreal. So looking forward to that opportunity.
So we will get into that. We'll get into the weekly forecast as we always do on our Tuesday episodes. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Sam Montembeault. He's been kind of left entirely out of the shuffle for the last week and a half. And then we will get into big change happened within the division. And does this spell, not disaster, but does this spell something for Montreal, which we would rather not see? And that is a competent Buffalo Sabres team. We'll get into that a little bit later, but first let's get into our weekly forecast. The Canadiens have 4 games this week. At the end, they have a home back-to-back with the Pittsburgh Penguins, but they start with the Philadelphia Flyers, and then next they have the Chicago Blackhawks. And now we might be tempted, given all that's been happening in Penguins land, to take them not seriously. We might be tempted, given the last game against them, not to take the Chicago Blackhawks seriously, especially since Connor Bedard is out. And we also might be tempted not to take the Philadelphia Flyers seriously, given how they coughed up a massive lead to the Canadiens last time. But I am here to say that every single one of the games this week needs to be played as if you are playing the Colorado Avalanche or the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, I think you might have that Flyers game backwards. The Flyers led 3-0 in that game, yes, but then the Canadiens also blew a lead in that game and lost.
Right.
They also, both teams
Everybody blew a lead.
I don't understand how hockey can work sometimes where both teams blow it. Like, that was a game, we'll get into the forecast. The Flyers win that game back in November 5-4 in a shootout. I don't think either team deserved to win that one. And it's the only reason why one team left with 2 points is because one of them had to. That was one of those kinds of games.
If we had relegation in the NHL, that would have been a prime game for it. All right, let's get into it real quick. What do you think the keys are against the Philadelphia Flyers? 1, take them seriously. 2, sick Mike Matheson on someone. Who do you sick him on?
Trevor Zegras. You glue Mike Matheson to Trevor Zegras, and you decide that's all the Flyers are going to have today. Zegras is the only point per game player for the Flyers right now, 32 points in 31 games. He's having a renaissance season, and it's kind of nice to see, because I know I was high on this player as a potential option for the Canadiens, not as a second line center. I don't think he's projects as a center long term in the National Hockey League. But with that said, getting him as the player that he already was always a good idea, especially at the price the Flyers had to pay. And the Ducks just fumbled that bag. The Ducks are doing fine, so they're certainly not worried about this at all. But, you stick Mike Matheson to Trevor Zegras and you're fine. Travis Konechny, 27 points in 31 games. And third in scoring for the Philadelphia Flyers, Christian Dvorak. I wish I was kidding. That is the truth. I'm really happy for Devo, man. Last year, he became he's part of the circle of friendship, and he always will be. I just think that, he probably had more offensively to give than what he was going to get you'd be able to give in Montreal, because he wasn't going to be able to play with the top end guys like Suzuki and Caulfield. There was no reason for them to play in that sort of situation. But he was never going to get the talent to play with lower in the lineup. Where now Philadelphia, he is playing much higher in the lineup. He's going to get to play with other guys, but he's always had that ability to put up points. So like, it shouldn't, overly shock people, but so it goes with them. I'll give you a lowdown on the Flyers a little bit. The Flyers, 38 points, fourth in the Metro, first in the wild card. So Montreal could pass them in the wild card standings, although that doesn't really matter as of right now because the Canadiens are in a divisional spot. But it's always good to put up a space between those. The Flyers are 29th in the league in goals for per game at 2.81, but 9th in goals against per game at 2.77. Power play is 25th, PK is 14th. So this is a team that wins by committee. This is a team that I feel like, funny enough, John Tortorella would have loved coaching, but he quit on them in a very John Tortorella way. I think you have to play a really solid game against them. Every line has to be able to chip in and keep pressure on a team like the Flyers. You have to have a better start than you did last time. If Montreal starts that game on time against Philadelphia, they win that game in regulation.
Absolutely agreed. Up next, just because we're running out of time, I have lots of things to say about the Flyers, but I'll say them after the game tomorrow. Up next, we have the Chicago Blackhawks. Connor Bedard is on IR. The last game against these two teams was a circus. The Canadiens got a billion power plays and then never got another one for another week or a month or so. Yeah. So what do we worry about with the Chicago Blackhawks?
Well, I mean, looking at them now without Bedard, so Bedard hurts his shoulder, he's out. Their next best player is Tyler Bertuzzi, and Bedard was almost 20 points clear of him. So it's a step down for Chicago. This is a game the Canadiens can't afford to take lightly. The Blackhawks, while they are at even strength and throughout the course of the game, pretty mid, 24th in goals for per game and 15th in goals against. They have a top 10 power play and a top 5 penalty kill. So the special teams are where the Chicago Blackhawks make their money. The Canadiens come into this week 4th in the power play in the league with 26% and 25th in the penalty kill. So almost the power play is going to match up well against that penalty kill, but the Canadiens can't afford to take too many penalties, even with Bedard on the shelf. That's another one where I think you look at this week for the Canadiens and you go, this should be, you go Philly, Chicago, Pittsburgh twice, sounds like points, but you can't afford to take teams like this lightly.
No. And then finally, we've got a back-to-back against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And that one to me is the most interesting one because it also involves to me the idea of what to do with your goaltending, which I know we're going to get into in a little bit more in depth in our next segment. But how do you handle that back-to-back against Pittsburgh? Given that it is a travel, it's a home and home. Pittsburgh right now is spiraling and crashing out hard, but I don't want the Montreal Canadiens to be the team that they figure it out against.
Yeah, and it's funny, you look at the schedule, and so the Canadiens played Pittsburgh last week. They beat them pretty handedly. That was Jakub Fowler's debut, and the next day or within a day, they trade Stuart Skinner, or they trade for Stuart Skinner. They trade away Tristan Jarry. And then they completely fall apart. They had a 5-1 lead against the San Jose Sharks in the third period, blew it, lost in overtime. They had a 3-0 lead. The following game, blew it in overtime. This is a team that can't hold a lead. The Canadian, funny being a Montreal Canadiens podcast and talking about another team who can't hold a lead, but the Canadiens, that was a 3-0 lead in the third period. They had less than 20 minutes to go and they would have had a regulation win and they blew it. That's a team you can't let up off the mat. That is a team that you have to keep down. And it's a team that maybe you're looking at this and going, Saturday night in Montreal, Sidney Crosby gets to have a taste of what that's like. And if you're the Montreal Canadiens, you are hoping that you are able to convince him that this is a place that he wants to play. I know that was put on hold for a while, but this Penguins team is in free fall and in a bad way. So I'm wondering how much of that is on the minds of maybe less so the players, but more so management. if at the end of this week, if there's one thing I want to see the Canadiens do, score on a breakaway. Against Edmonton, they went like 0 for a billion on breakaways. Against Calvin Pickard of all people. So I think like last week I said let's focus on the penalty kill. This week it's more along the lines of finishing on your chances. Score on some breakaways. Don't overthink it. Take your shot if you have it. If you have a nice move, put a nice move on, but start putting some of those away because you're not going to get an infinite number of those chances over the course of the year.
Absolutely. So I think, this is again, we've said this before, this is a winnable week.
Yeah.
And last time we said that the first time we said that, I think the Canadiens came back with 0 wins. So we're not going to say this is a winnable week. We're going to say this is a week where the Canadiens like really need to work hard and hopefully they'll come out with 4 out of 8 points.
4 out of 8. I think you need 6 or 7. 6, 7, as the kids would say. I think you need 6 or 7 in this week for it to be a legitimate success. 5 is okay.
Okay. I'm just saying I'm trying to set our expectations low so we're not disappointed.
The standards changed, man. You shut out you played the Oilers like that. The standard's different now. You got we need to. I'm raising the bar on this team.
Okay. Who's not raising the bar right now is Sam Montembeault. That's very unfortunate, very mean of me, but we are going to get into what the Montreal Canadiens could do with him in just a moment here on Locked On Canadiens. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum tips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. They have player props that update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. I myself like to use FanDuel on Sundays to get really close and get really into the action. And often it will make it just more interesting if the games are actually getting boring. So if you want to get right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Canadiens with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. It's time to have an uncomfortable conversation about Sam Montembeault. I don't want to have it, but we have to. He is not good right now.
He's like, not good right now, and where is he?
He's like hopelessly bad, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, I feel like he's been disappeared by the Canadiens.
Yeah, so his last start was on December 2nd against the Ottawa Senators at home. It was a Tuesday. So as you're listening to this, it's been 2 weeks since his last start. We still don't, as the time of we're recording this, we don't know who's starting on Tuesday. Montreal's been keeping that pretty close to the vest. And as they should. They don't know until they know, and I bet they don't want that information getting out even if they did. They could have started. I know Sam Montembeault was sick at some point during this stretch. There have been a couple of opportunities where they could have played Sam Montembeault, like Sunday night at Edmonton, or versus Edmonton, like Saturday night against the New York Rangers, and they chose a rookie in both games over Sam Montembeault. And what I find interesting is in those games that Fowler started, Montembeault was on the bench. Montembeault was the backup. He was not in the press box. So I'm curious what the Canadiens think right now. And I'm curious, like, if they think him sitting on the bench is going to help him fix this, because I'm highly doubtful that that's the case. Like, what do you make of him not being the one in the press box that it was Dobes. Let's start there. What do you make of that?
So when like in Fowler's debut,
the 2 Fowler games, it was Dobes who sat and was in a suit, and they had Montembeault ready to go in case Fowler stumbled, and they never had a chance to put him in. Like, what do you make of that choice first?
So you brought up that maybe they wanted Dobes to get some time from the press box, to get to see the game from above, right?
Yep.
I also think that they're still he's still the backup. Formally, Sam Montembeault is the starter, and Dobes is the backup. So they didn't want to mess with that, right? And I think that this was also like kind of a signal. Sorry, I'm like stumbling all over my words. I'm just a little bit confused. Not confused. I feel like the Canadiens do. It's like, what do we do with this guy? I also feel like that also sends the message. This is important. That also sends the message that the Fowler call-up is not necessarily permanent, because they're running with this narrative that they want to see what this kid has got. He was always going to get games in the NHL. This is his chance. This is their chance to see what they have in him. So by putting Dobes in the press box, they're clearly kind of signaling that, right?
Yeah.
But then you have Dobes playing incredibly well against Edmonton, and all of a sudden, like, the question marks go again, right? Like, it just, like, to me, like, this is a much more impossible situation than the Canadiens had 2 years ago when they had 3 goalies.
Yeah, and you know what though, like, I know the angle you took there is one that I know a lot of fans take as well, which is, well, Dobes played well, so another question mark for Montembeault. Your move, Canadiens. I think the Canadiens are hoping that anybody can take the mantle, and that if it's Dobes, cool, we have a goalie. Because right now they don't have a goalie. Yes, Dobes played exceptionally well against Edmonton. He was, it's hard to say vintage Dobes when he's a rookie, but that was the sort of experience we're expecting from him. He's going to battle. Some of the saves are going to look kind of goofy. There was that one Matt Savoy chance that, like, Dobes frankly just missed it and the puck slid out the other side. Dobes, to me, is a backup. And he plays like a backup, which is why I was surprised that he was not the one backing up Fowler. Because Sam Montembeault is not a backup goalie. He doesn't play like a backup goalie. He plays like a starter. He tries to be, like Fowler, calm, collected, very reserved movements, very consistent. Dobes, the way he plays does not speak to a level of consistency that you need from a starting goaltender. He's all over the place. And that's fine for a backup goalie who's going to play once or twice every 2 weeks, right? Like, that's just the career of that kind of player. I don't know how this ends, but I'm starting to get the feeling it doesn't end well for Sam Montembeault here. Like, where do we go now? We still don't know who's going to start Tuesday. You guys might, as you're listening to this, you're going, you dummies, he's starting Tuesday against Philly, which, fair.
Okay.
But, like, didn't he get pulled in that game? The last time they played Philly? Wasn't a goalie pulled in that game against Philly?
Yeah.
I'm looking this up because I forgot.
That entire game was it Dobes?
It was. Someone's probably screaming at their speakers right now.
I just remember the Flyers scoring.
No, nobody got pulled.
I remember the Flyers scoring 3 goals in like a minute.
Yeah. You know what happened in that game? Montembeault locked in after those 3 goals. He locked in because he made 38 saves in that game and gave up 4 goals. So he locked in after that. Maybe that's what they've been saving him for, is like, hey, this is an opportunity for you to get right. But also in that game, he gave up 3 goals really quick. And if I remember correctly, we weren't pumped about those 3 goals that went in.
Yeah. So all of this to say is that I still don't know what to do with Samuel Montembeault, but I think that at the end of the day, like, the question you asked, I don't think this ends well for Samuel Montembeault. Like, it's either not going to end well for Samuel Montembeault or it's not going to end well for the Montreal Canadiens. And I think, like, at the end of the day, the Canadiens have to choose themselves in this equation.
Yeah, whatever that means. And right now, that means playing Dobes.
Yeah.
And maybe playing Fowler.
I do think
the only way you'll know if Montembeault can figure this out is by putting him back into games And in doing so, you're putting your team in danger of not being able to win those games. Like having a struggling goalie is a really difficult task to undo. Look at the Edmonton Oilers,
Yeah.
like it's tough. It's really
Look at
tough
the
to
Edmonton
undo.
Oilers for the last few years.
Exactly. That's what and
Yeah.
they were adamant. They're like, no, we're going to make this work.
Yeah.
And then they just decided, actually, we're not. And I wonder at what point the Canadiens get there and if they let this drag on for much longer.
So I was unable to find any examples of this happening and like ending well in recent history. But what I do think is that this is the last thing I'm going to say because we do have to move on. What I will say is that if you are going to try to get Sam to fix it, like there's two things. Like one, wait and see when the Canadian Olympic roster gets announced and he's not there. Like if this will calm him down and he'll get out of his head. And two, if you're going to start him, don't start him against these winnable games this week. You start him against impossible games because if you're going to lose anyway, you put him in there, right? He's going to face a lot of shots and he's either going to figure it out or he's going to give up 9.
Like Vegas.
Yeah.
His last exceptional game was at Vegas on that road trip that we all went, this is going to be really hard. And they played pretty well up until that Colorado game.
So if you think you're going to lose the game anyway, just put Montembeault in. If you think you have a chance to win, put one of the other two guys. That's how I would play it. But I'm not Marty or the Montreal Canadiens, and I really don't envy them this decision. All right. Yep. Speaking of decisions, the Buffalo Sabres finally let go of Kevyn Adams after fans had been asking for it for what feels like 100 years. We're going to talk about how this changes the Montreal Canadiens' future within the division and just in general in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed-sponsored job posts put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. And I've been in that position. You need to hire someone and the pressure's on, the project is failing, and every day that you don't have that right hire is just a nightmare. And that's exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. And now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring. Indeed is all you need. So when the news was announced that the Buffalo Sabres have parted ways with general manager Kevyn Adams and have hired Jarmo Kekalainen, I texted the group chat that the Tage Thompson dream was over. And now I think that, like, for me, the way that this affects the Canadiens in the immediate is that the carcass is no longer there to pick at. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll take the opposite swing on this because they hired Jarmo Kekalainen, except they didn't. He had already been there. Jarmo's been there since May. Jarmo knows where the bodies are buried, man. Like, he knows what's wrong in Buffalo. And if he comes to if they come to the determination that this is a full gut job and they have to do this again, does Tage Thompson want to stick around for that? Because I'm doubtful of that. What I gathered from this. Not even just this instance, right? Just this firing of a general manager. But that, coupled with Quinn Hughes being traded out of Vancouver and Edmonton finally making a trade for a goalie and Nashville trading a defender for a pick, is that I think we're getting to the point of the NHL schedule where teams have decided enough is enough. And they are picking a direction and they're heading in that direction. The Oilers decided we need a goalie. We're done waiting around for this to fix itself. It's not going to. It's time. Vancouver, while yes, there are some thoughts out there that Quinn Hughes wasn't going to sign an extension, to trade him mid-season like this is a choice, right? They wanted to pick up what they could now and also be worse in the long run so that they can be better later. Buffalo finally deciding to do this now in the same week, I think is a lot of teams recognizing, all right, it's getting late early. We have to pick a lane. The Buffalo Sabres picked a lane, and I don't think it's them being better instantly. I think that they're deciding that they're going to trim some pieces off of this. It remains to be seen, right, what they decide to do next. But my brain doesn't necessarily immediately go to, well, they're keeping everybody because the general manager's gone and nobody's going to want to trade. Like Tage Thompson could very easily say, I'm sick of this. Rasmus Dahlin could say, I'm sick of this. You know, they're already having a hard time keeping Tuck. He doesn't want to stick around. So like, I'm looking at this and going, I think they might be staring down the barrel of another one of these things. Whatever you want. I don't even want to call that a rebuild, because what did they build? They didn't build anything. They just, I get people conflate rebuilding with tanking. Tanking is an act of a rebuild, right? A rebuild has a goal in mind and has a team that symbolizes something that can win a hockey, be the best team in the league one year. Like the Sabres have never had that vision. So this is not a rebuild in Buffalo. It never has been. These have been teardowns and tanks that had nowhere else to go. So, you know, I look at this and I don't necessarily think that it's time to start looking away from Buffalo as far as pieces that you can have. I think it might be the opposite. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the holiday roster freeze starts in a week or so. And then after that, when they come back, you won't be able to do double retention on trades. So the retention deadline is essentially coming up at this holiday roster freeze as well.
So personally, I just feel like they could have gone in a very different direction, and they didn't. I feel like they brought on more of the same.
Well, it is more. He was already there. He was a senior advisor. Like, I know what you mean. Like bringing in Hockey Man to do Hockey Man thing.
Yeah.
But like, quite literally, it is symbolic of that as well. They already had him. It's not a new guy.
Yeah. But it's not like it's like that situation where they, you know, like let's say they brought in Lou Lamoriello and Kyle Dubas, and then it was like Kyle Dubas's baby, right? Like they went from like, you know, it's not like that. They didn't go from like really old school hockey guy to like a forward thinker or someone new, which again, like I know there's like a lot of, this is not like a referendum on Kyle Dubas in any way. I'm just saying, like you could have gone in a different, you could have done what the Montreal Canadiens did. Take like a third liner who's a GM and then make him like get like a brain to be the GM, you know?
Yep.
And they didn't
from what I've heard too, I know Elliot Friedman has said this, that what Montreal did ruffled a lot of feathers in the National Hockey League, because the NHL loves to pick and choose which people get to be GMs.
Yeah.
And none of them had Kent Hughes picked.
Yeah.
And that you know, they were a little upset that Montreal went in that direction, but tough. Whatever. I think it's weird that the NHL thinks they get to pick and choose who the general managers of their teams are. You don't own these teams. Chill out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. Like, do something weird. do something different. Yeah. Now, they've tried weird. Remember when Ralph Kruger, the soccer coach, was their head coach for a few years? That was weird and not a good idea.
in reverse.
No, yeah, I think you need, as a head coach, you need a guy who can do the X's and O's part of it. And I don't know necessarily that Ralph Kruger, a soccer guy, was able to do that. But I agree with you from a front office standpoint. These guys don't have to be ex-players. And yet, I off the top of my head, I'm not doing the math, but I feel like 70% of the league goes that route. And it just doesn't have to be that way.
There's so many of them. And it's so unnecessary.
Yeah. And especially when you think of it too, like, you know, players, when it comes to like negotiations, players are not really involved. So like, why would you have that kind of that's why I love the Canadiens going with the agent in Kent Hughes. Like this is the problem though, right? You're not going to make Pat Brisson give up his being an agent to come be your general manager, especially not of the Buffalo actual Sabres. Yeah. Like that's not happening. You know, Darren Ferris is not bailing on his multi-million-dollar clients to come be the GM of the Sabres. So you're like, I don't know necessarily that there's an easy, like, who's signing up for this job, Laura? Like, you're going to have to take a shot on somebody who isn't a somebody yet.
Yeah. You either
I don't know that fixes any of this either. That's such a silly task to hand to somebody.
And like the times that like I can remember it, like the Arizona Coyotes, I don't know if they were Arizona at the time, but like hiring John Shake, it didn't work out.
Yes. Well, it didn't turn out because that guy was a snake oil salesman. Like they picked the wrong guy, but it was a chance. And like you look back on it, I remember he picked Clayton Keller in the first round with a high pick out in Arizona. And everyone was like, whoa, that was off the board. It was one of the best picks Arizona ever made.
Yeah.
Like, I think there are more clever options out there than Jarmo Kekalainen. Who did we get through the entire bit without saying his name? I feel like that's really funny. I think we might have gotten really far without saying Jarmo Kekalainen.
I did. I said at the very beginning.
You said at the beginning, and then we did this whole thing talking about how none of these guys. Anyway, I just think that there have to be smarter options out there. I don't think they named him interim general manager. I think he's just the general manager.
Yeah. Which, I don't know. Looking at what happened in Columbus, I'm like, that's not the guy that I would have picked. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, what happened in Columbus was he had 1 year where he sold the farm for a playoff run, and it was awesome because that city needed it. That team, that franchise needed it. But the long-term success was not there, and that's why he's not there. So I'm not closing the door on Buffalo deciding we're blowing this up. I'm keeping a close eye on that. It might not develop until the offseason, but I think that there's a chance that they just decide this core is toast. Not unlike what Vancouver has had to do over the last little while. And if they could trade Elias Pettersson, they probably would, but they can't. It's not possible. So that's their team now. Yeah. I think Buffalo, there's a chance they're in the same boat a year from now.
So, okay, before we move on to our trivia, Tage Thompson, still a pipe dream?
I think it's still a pipe dream just because the assets you would need to do it. And I think maybe after the Cousins trade that Buffalo is a little gun shy about trading in division. Because at the time they weren't, right? They traded him to Ottawa and then they did very poorly in that trade. And I think they might second think any interdivisional trade, especially one of that magnitude.
Yeah. All right. It is like we are running out of time. I could talk about this stuff all day. I feel like the front office portion of it, the what to do with Sam kind of thing, the this part of it, the trades. In fact, I could talk about it all day, except there is a game tomorrow and we do have to move on to our next episode. But before we do that, it's time for our trivia.
Yes. All right. In honor of Alexander Texier's 2 goals last week, this question was themed around him. Who was the last player to represent France at the World Championships and score a goal for the Montreal Canadiens? Laura, do you have the answer to this one?
No, because the only thing I remember was that Cristobal Huet is not the answer.
Yeah, Alexander Christian wrote, he said, I think I would have remembered a Cristobal Huet goal really vividly, and that didn't happen. So I ended up getting the right answer. It's Sebastian Bordelot. He scored 2 goals against Washington on April 6th, 1998. Now, he wasn't born in France. He was born in Vancouver. However, his father was a French national, so he was a French citizen and able to play for France by his lineage. So that's why the question was phrased that way. I wanted to make sure that it was very specific. The correct answers came to us from Boondoggle, the aforementioned Alexander Christian, and H.J. Cuneo. So thank you for playing yesterday. Today's question. We looked at the schedule ahead and we saw a player who played for all of these teams. So Paul Coffey, former Blackhawk, Penguin, and Flyer, scored 11 times against the Montreal Canadiens. On December 8th, 1992, he scored against Montreal while playing for the LA Kings, but there was something special about that goal. What made that goal and that game unique? If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below this video. Let us know how smart you are. That's December 8th, 1992, Montreal versus the LA Kings.
You heard the man, and you can send us your guesses on social media, Locked On Canadiens on TikTok, Blue Sky, and Instagram. You can leave them in the YouTube comments, or you can email them to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in today to Locked On Canadiens. Tomorrow we will have our recap of the Flyers game, and hopefully it won't be a disaster. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Canadiens and that you follow us so you get all the latest episodes. Plus, it's Spotify Wrapped season. Did we make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we send you to the first 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure you make your second listen NHL game night on Locked On NHL. We want to thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all tomorrow.